The first time I saw Shadow Spear, two of them were fighting hard enough to shake an armored door. I stood outside the training hall, deployment orders in hand, wondering whether Alliance personnel had made a mistake. Orion Command Nexus was the military heart of the frontier, where dozens of ancient civilizations coordinated fleets, convoys, and wars. Humanity had joined the Galactic Defense Alliance only 6 years ago. To species that had crossed the stars for millennia, we were inexperienced newcomers. Shadow Spear was different. The unit consisted of 12 Velari women, elite warriors sent on missions other soldiers considered suicidal. They had survived enemy fortresses, lost colonies, and operations so classified that entire reports were blacked out. And somehow, I had been assigned to them. When I entered the hall, the fighting stopped. 12 pairs of alien eyes turned toward me. Commander Maya Voss stepped forward and took my orders. Jake Miller, Human Technical Specialist. Yes, Commander. She read the document twice. This must be an administrative error. That's what I was hoping you'd say. No one laughed. Maya handed the orders back. Shadow Spear did not request a human coordinator. I looked at the 12 warriors surrounding me. At that moment, none of us knew my assignment had not been an accident. Someone had placed me here deliberately. And somewhere inside Orion Command Nexus, a traitor already knew I had arrived. My first week with Shadow Spear taught me two things. The Velari did not trust easily, and someone was trying very hard to make sure they died. I discovered the second fact while reviewing 11 months of logistics records. At first, the failures looked ordinary. Ammunition shipments arrived late, medical supplies were redirected to other bases, replacement armor vanished between stations, fuel cells were delivered with incorrect authorization codes. Any one of those mistakes could be explained. Together, they formed a pattern. Every major failure occurred shortly before Shadow Spear received a high-priority mission. I spent 3 nights checking the records before I showed Maya. She found me alone in the operations room, surrounded by floating cargo manifests. "You are still here," she said. I noticed. I meant with the unit. Apparently, several warriors had expected me to request reassignment after our first combat alert. I finished my work. Maya stepped beside me. I expanded the records. Your supplies aren't disappearing randomly. Someone knows when you're about to deploy. Her expression hardened. Explain. I highlighted 6 missions. Here, medical shipment delayed 40 hours. Here, ammunition redirected. Here, replacement shield generators sent to a station that never requested them. I brought up the dates. Every failure happened before a classified operation. Maya stared at the display. Mission details are restricted. Exactly. That was when the room became quiet. If I was right, our problem wasn't incompetence. It was intelligence. Someone with access to Alliance military systems was identifying Shadow Spear's missions and interfering with the unit's supplies before deployment. Before Maya could answer, an alarm sounded. A red tactical warning appeared across the wall. Draven vessels detected, Frontier Sector 9. The Draven Empire had been probing Alliance territory for months, always appearing where defenses were weakest. Maya immediately turned toward the door. Shadow Spear deploys in 20 minutes. I checked the mission data appearing on my terminal. Then I saw the destination. The coordinates were classified. So was the convoy route supplying the operation. Yet according to the logistics system, 3 containers of Shadow Spear ammunition had already been redirected 12 hours earlier. 12 hours before the mission officially existed. I looked at Maya. She understood immediately. Someone knew, she said. Yes, can you find them? I stared at the vanished cargo records. Not yet, but for the first time, I knew where to start. Give me access to the human logistics network. Maya studied me for a moment. Then she authorized it. That decision changed everything. Because Alliance systems had been built around trust. Human systems had not, and whoever was betraying Shadow Spear was about to discover the difference. The human logistics office aboard Atlas Point Station occupied 3 rooms nobody else wanted. The ventilation rattled, the lights flickered, and half our equipment had been repaired so many times that the original manufacturers would have denied building it. It felt like home. I arrived with 11 months of Shadow Spear records and found 3 Earth engineers waiting for me. Sarah Chen looked at the files. How classified? Very. How illegal is what you want us to do? Not illegal. She frowned. That's disappointing. I ignored her and connected my terminal. For 14 hours, we analyzed every shipment assigned to Shadow Spear. We compared departure times, authorization codes, routing changes, mission schedules, maintenance reports, and security access logs. The Alliance had already investigated each failure separately. That was their mistake. Humans liked patterns. At 0317, Sarah found one. Jake. I moved beside her. She displayed 2 timelines. One showed Shadow Spear's classified deployments. The other showed its missing supplies. The connection was perfect. Every time Maya's unit received a critical assignment, something disappeared. Sometimes ammunition, sometimes medicine, sometimes fuel, always something important, and always before the mission. Someone isn't just stealing cargo, Sarah said. They weakening the unit. I stared at the data. That meant whoever was responsible knew where Shadow Spear was going before the warriors themselves received final orders. I contacted Maya. She answered immediately. Did you find something? Yes. I need permission to alter your next supply manifest. For what purpose? To lie. There was a pause. Explain. I told her my plan. We would create 2 versions of Shadow Spear's next operation. The official military network would receive false coordinates. The real coordinates would travel through a separate human communications channel. Then I would build my own supply chain. No Alliance depots. No standard routes. Human cargo ships only. Every container would carry an autonomous tracking beacon hidden inside its frame. If someone touches our supplies, I said, no. And the false coordinates? If Draven ships appear there, we confirm the leak. Maya remained silent. You understand, she finally said, that falsifying operational data violates Alliance protocol. Yes, you could lose your position. Probably. Your human superiors approve? I didn't ask. Another silence. Then Maya said, proceed. That was the moment I understood why Shadow Spear had survived so many impossible missions. Maya cared about regulations. She simply cared more about bringing her people home. Within 48 hours, my hidden network was ready. Weapons moved aboard civilian transports. Medical supplies traveled inside engineering shipments. Fuel cells changed vessels 6 times before reaching Black Ridge. Then I transmitted the false coordinates. Only 19 Alliance officers could see them. 3 hours later, a human reconnaissance probe detected Draven warships moving toward that exact location. I stared at the report. We had our proof. There was a traitor inside High Command. What I didn't know was that the traitor had already found another way to learn the truth. And Shadow Spear was flying directly into the trap. Shadow Spear departed Black Ridge at 0600. I watched their ship disappear from the tactical display and told myself the plan was working. The Draven fleet had taken the bait. 7 enemy vessels were waiting near the false coordinates I had placed in the Alliance network. Maya and her warriors were traveling toward the real target, almost 4 light years away. For once, Shadow Spear would have supplies waiting when they arrived. At 0812, everything changed. Jake, Sarah's voice came through my terminal. I heard something in it immediately. What happened? Draven movement. New contacts. The tactical map opened. My stomach tightened. The 7 ships at the false coordinates had not moved. These were different vessels, 11 of them, and they were moving directly toward Shadow Spear's real position. That's impossible. I checked twice. Only the human logistics team and Shadow Spear knew those coordinates. I opened a channel. Maya, abort the mission. Static answered. I tried again. Nothing. Then the emergency beacon activated. Shadow Spear had been engaged. The tactical display showed their ship dropping from faster-than-light travel inside a system filled with shattered moons and dense asteroid fields. Draven vessels appeared around them seconds later. It was not an interception. It was an execution. I watched Maya's ship disappear from our sensors. Communications went dead. Alliance Command reacted immediately. A rescue operation would be considered. A fleet would be assembled. Authorization would be requested. Risk assessments would be completed. Estimated response time: 9 hours. I stared at the screen. Shadow Spear had ammunition for perhaps 2. Jake, Sarah said quietly, Don T. She knew me too well. I was already moving. Atlas Point's auxiliary hangar contained an old human transport called the Wayfarer. It was slow, ugly, and technically awaiting decommissioning. It was also available. I loaded every weapon, medical kit, fuel cell, and ration package I could fit aboard. The hangar officer blocked the ramp. You don't have authorization. Correct. You cannot enter an active combat zone. I know. Then what exactly are you doing? I looked toward the Wayfarer. My job. I launched 12 minutes later. The direct route was controlled by the Draven. So I chose the asteroid field. No Alliance navigator recommended crossing it. The rocks moved unpredictably. Sensor interference was severe, and one mistake would turn the transport into debris. Fortunately, humans had a different definition of impossible routes. Sometimes they were simply routes nobody sensible used. 3 hours later, I found the first wreckage. Draven. Then another. Also Draven. Finally, my sensors detected a weak human tracking beacon. Beyond it, hidden between 2 fractured asteroids, was Shadow Spear's damaged ship. Its engines were dead. Its weapons were nearly empty. Enemy vessels were closing from 3 directions. I opened a channel. Maya, this is Miller. Static. Then her voice. Jake? She sounded genuinely surprised. Please tell me you ordered supplies. There was a long silence. Then I heard Emily laughing somewhere behind her. Maya spoke again. You were ordered to remain at Atlas Point. No, I was advised to remain there. That distinction may get you killed. I brought ammunition. Another pause. Approach our port side, Maya said. The Draven ships were almost within firing range. I looked at the tactical display and increased power to the engines. For the first time since meeting Shadow Spear, nobody was asking when I planned to leave. Now the only question was whether any of us would get back. The Wayfarer was never designed to enter combat. That became obvious when the first Draven shot passed close enough to overload 3 warning systems at once. I ignored them. Maya, open your cargo hatch. We cannot dock under fire. I am not docking. There was a short silence. Jake, trust me. I accelerated toward Shadow Spear's damaged ship, released the first cargo container, and fired its maneuvering thrusters remotely. The container crossed the gap between us and disappeared into their open bay. Ammunition. The second contained medical supplies. The third carried fuel cells. The Draven had spent hours reducing Shadow Spear's ability to fight. I gave it back in 90 seconds. Then the Velari answered. Their ship came alive. Weapons that had been silent opened fire. One Draven vessel lost its engines immediately. Another turned away after a concentrated strike tore through its forward shields. Maya contacted me. We have wounded. How many? 4. Emily is critical. That changed the plan. I brought the Wayfarer alongside their ship while Shadow Spear covered me. The 2 vessels connected for 11 seconds. Long enough. 2 Velari carried Emily aboard. Her armor was burned open across her side. Blood covered the deck beneath her before I reached the medical compartment. Stay with me. Her eyes opened slightly. Human. Unfortunately, you came back. I sealed the wound with emergency foam. Save your energy. The remaining Draven ships were reorganizing. We had minutes. I returned to the cockpit. Maya's image appeared on my display. We can move, but they will catch us before the jump point. I studied the asteroid field. Not if they follow me. No, it was the first time I heard fear in her voice. Not fear for herself. For me, I transferred an escape route to her ship. Take your people home. Jake, that transport cannot outrun them. It doesn't need to. I disconnected before she could argue. Then I turned the Wayfarer toward the Draven fleet. They followed. Of course they did. To them, I was an isolated transport with no escort and minimal weapons. Easy prey. I led them deeper into the asteroid field. The Wayfarer shook violently as I passed between rocks close enough to scrape the hull. Behind me, the larger Draven vessels struggled to maintain formation. One collided with an asteroid. Another lost shields. I kept going. My tracking display showed Shadow Spear moving toward the jump point. That was all I needed. The Draven finally realized what I was doing. By then, Maya was gone. I reversed course. 2 enemy ships blocked my route. I armed the Wayfarer's last missiles. The first missed. The second didn't. An explosion opened a path barely wider than my ship. I went through it. When I returned to Black Ridge 14 hours later, the Wayfarer had 1 engine, no weapons, and several sections without atmosphere. Maya was waiting in the hangar. All 11 standing members of Shadow Spear were behind her. Nobody spoke as I climbed down. I looked past them. Emily? Alive, Maya said. I nodded. That was enough. Maya stepped closer. You disobeyed Alliance command. Yes. You stole a transport. Borrowed. You entered enemy territory alone. I noticed. Her expression remained perfectly still. Then she extended her hand. Velari warriors did not shake hands. They placed a closed fist against the chest of someone they considered worthy to stand beside them. Maya touched her fist to my chest. Behind her, 11 warriors did the same. I finally understood what it meant. I had arrived as their coordinator. I returned as something else. But there was no time to consider it. One of my hidden tracking beacons had transmitted while I was gone. It had recorded every system that accessed the real mission coordinates, and one identification code belonged to an officer so highly ranked that, at first, I assumed the data had to be wrong. Then I checked it again. It wasn't The traitor we had been hunting wasn't somewhere inside Alliance Command. He was sitting near the top of it. The identification code belonged to Admiral Korren. He controlled Frontier Intelligence. He also sat 3 seats below the Supreme Commander. I checked the beacon data 7 times. Same result. Korren had accessed Shadow Spear's real coordinates 17 minutes before the Draven ambush. I took everything to Maya. She studied the evidence without speaking. If we accuse him openly, she said, he will erase the records. Then we don't accuse him. What do? We let him think he won. 2 hours later, Alliance Command received my report stating that all tracking data had been destroyed aboard the Wayfarer. Korren summoned me that evening. His office overlooked Orion's Central Fleet docks. He was an Atari, tall and narrow, with ceremonial gold markings across his uniform. You acted recklessly, he said. Yes, Admiral. You violated direct orders. Yes, and yet Shadow Spear survived. Barely. He watched me carefully. Your tracking devices recovered nothing? Nothing useful. That was the first time I saw him relax. It was enough. While we spoke, Sarah and the Atlas Point team were tracing his private communications. Humans had built the beacons to do more than report location. They remembered every network, every terminal, every transmission. At 2214, Sarah sent me one word. Found. Korren had transmitted classified Alliance intelligence to the Draven Empire for almost 3 years. Convoy routes, defense schedules, fleet movements. Shadow Spear had become a particular problem because Maya's unit kept disrupting Draven operations. So Korren had tried to remove them. Quietly, I stood. Thank you for your time, Admiral. His eyes narrowed. Why are you smiling? I wasn't aware I was. The doors opened behind me. Maya entered first. 11 Velari followed. Alliance security came behind them. Korren understood immediately. He reached toward his terminal. Nothing happened. Sarah had already disconnected it. For the first time since I met him, the Admiral looked afraid. "You have no authority," he said. Maya placed the evidence on his desk. "We have enough." Korren was arrested without resistance. Within 6 hours, Alliance forces raided 12 compromised installations. Within 12, the Draven invasion timetable was discovered. They had planned to attack in 9 days. Millions of soldiers were already moving toward the frontier. The invasion never happened, but the investigation produced one final surprise. I was called into a secure communications room the following morning. A human intelligence officer was waiting on the screen. "Specialist Miller," she said, "you performed adequately." "Adequately? You found the traitor. After nearly getting killed. That was not part of the plan." I stared at her. "What plan?" She remained silent for a moment. Then she opened my original deployment orders. I saw the authorization code. Human intelligence. My assignment had been altered deliberately. "You suspected Korren. We suspected someone. So you sent me. We needed an outsider. Someone unfamiliar with Alliance assumptions." I leaned back. There was never an administrative error. No. Did Maya know? No. I thought about my first day. About 12 Velari warriors waiting for me to quit. About Maya offering me a transfer. Why me? The officers studied me. Because you notice when things don't add up. The transmission ended. I sat alone for several minutes. Then the door opened. Maya was standing there. "Well?" she asked. I looked at her. Apparently, I wasn't assigned to Shadow Spear by mistake. Maya considered this. Then she nodded. "I know. How? Humans make mistakes constantly." She turned toward the corridor. "But sending you here seemed unusually specific." I followed her out. For the first time, I heard Maya laugh. The Draven invasion collapsed before it began. Once Korren's network was exposed, Alliance intelligence intercepted the invasion plans hidden inside his transmissions. Fleet groups moved to reinforce the frontier. Supply depots changed locations. Defense platforms activated along routes the Draven believed were unprotected. The enemy arrived expecting open doors. They found loaded guns. Within 3 days, the Draven fleet withdrew. Nobody celebrated at Black Ridge. Shadow Spear simply returned to training. That was their way. The rest of the galaxy reacted differently. For weeks, military officials visited Atlas Point to study what they called the human methodology. They expected something complicated. There wasn't anything complicated about it. We questioned assumptions. We built backups. We hid supplies where an enemy wouldn't expect them. And when regulations became more dangerous than breaking them, we broke them. Apparently, this was revolutionary. Galactic High Command eventually issued a formal recommendation proposing mixed-species military units based partly on the Shadow Spear incident. Humanity supported it immediately. The older civilizations debated it for 6 months. Naturally, my own future was decided much faster. Human Command offered me a promotion and a position aboard Atlas Point. It was a good assignment. Safe. Important. I refused. The officer reviewing my request stared at me through the communication screen. "You understand that your temporary assignment has ended?" "Yes. You can return to human forces." "I know. Then why are you requesting permanent deployment at Black Ridge?" I considered the question. There were 12 reasons. I didn't tell him that. I still have work there. He sighed. "Does Shadow Spear want you?" I asked. That evening, I returned to my quarters and began packing. My orders expired at midnight. I assumed that was the end. I was wrong again. When I stepped into the corridor carrying my deployment case, Emily was waiting. Her injuries had healed, although she still moved carefully. "You leaving?" My assignment ended. She looked at the case. That was not my question. Before I could answer, she walked away. I followed her toward the training hall. The doors opened. Nobody was inside. "Emily?" She kept walking through the opposite exit. Then I saw them. All 12 members of Shadow Spear were crossing the training ground toward me. Maya was in front. For a moment, I thought they had come to say goodbye. I set down my case. Maya stopped in front of me. Jake Miller, Commander. Shadow Spear held a vote this morning. That surprised me. About what? You. That surprised me more. Maya handed me a document. I looked down. It was a permanent assignment order. My name was already on it. Alliance regulations now permit mixed species special operations units, she said. I heard. Shadow Spear requires a field coordinator. I thought you didn't request human personnel. We did not. Emily smiled behind her. Maya continued. This time, we are. I looked at the 12 signatures. Every warrior had voted yes. You, serious. We rarely joke. Emily cleared her throat. Maya ignored her. You entered enemy territory when ordered to remain safe. You brought supplies when we had none. You stayed behind when withdrawal would have been easier. She placed her fist against my chest. You came back for us. One by one, the others repeated the gesture. Emily was last. You lasted longer than 6 days, she said. Apparently. I looked at Maya. So what happens now? She turned toward the training hall. Training begins at 0600. I picked up my case. That's it. Maya glanced back. You wanted a ceremony? No. Good. I followed them inside. Years later, Maya told me what Shadow Spear had believed when I first arrived. They thought humans were weak because we were young. They expected me to run because I was different. But when the trap closed around them, I had returned. Not because regulations required it. Not because anyone ordered me. I returned because they were my team. And humanity had taught me something the galaxy was only beginning to understand. Once we decide someone is ours, we do not measure the distance back. We simply come, and we do not leave our people behind. I remained with Shadow Spear for 27 years. During that time, the galaxy changed more than anyone aboard Orion Command Nexus had expected. The mixed species program that began after the Draven conspiracy expanded across the Alliance. At first, the old civilizations resisted it. Velari commanders preferred Velari soldiers. Atari strategists trusted Atari calculations. Humans, as usual, were considered useful but difficult. Then the results arrived. Mixed units survived missions others did not. Human engineers redesigned Velari equipment. Velari warriors trained human infantry. Atari analysts learned that instinct could sometimes identify dangers their models overlooked. Nobody admitted humanity had been right. They simply adopted our methods. Shadow Spear changed too. I was never Velari. Nobody pretended otherwise. I could not match them in strength or speed. During training, Emily threw me across the room often enough that I eventually learned which wall panels were safest to hit. But I had my purpose. I made sure they had ammunition. I made sure evacuation routes existed before missions began. I prepared alternatives for plans that were supposed to be impossible to fail. Most importantly, I learned never to trust a system simply because someone called it secure. The Draven Empire eventually signed an armistice. Admiral Korren died in an Alliance prison. Black Ridge Base remained operational. Years passed. Then, one morning, I stood in the same training ground where I had first met Shadow Spear. My hair had turned gray. Maya's scar had faded. Emily still claimed she could defeat me in 3 seconds. She was probably right. A group of new recruits watched us from across the field. Humans, Velari, Korren, species that once would never have served together. One recruit asked Maya how Shadow Spear had accepted its first human. Maya looked at me. We did not, she said. I smiled. The recruit seemed confused. Maya continued. We waited for him to leave. Nobody spoke. We believed humans were weak because they were different from us. We believed their short lives made them impatient. We believed their lack of tradition made them unreliable. She looked toward the stars beyond the station shields. Then real danger came. Her voice remained quiet, and the human came back for us. I remembered the asteroid field. The damaged Wayfarer. Emily bleeding on my deck. I remembered being afraid. That part never entered the official reports. Maya faced the recruits again. He could have remained safe. His commanders told him to wait. Protocol told him to wait. Logic told him that 12 warriors were not worth risking another life. She paused. But humans possess a strange definition of belonging. Her eyes found mine. They do not become part of a team because someone assigns them to it. The training ground was completely silent. They become part of a team when they decide no one gets left behind. That statement entered the official Shadow Spear archive. Years later, historians would call my assignment a turning point in human-alliance relations. They were wrong. History likes important plans. It likes strategy. It likes believing someone understood what was happening. None of us did. I was a technical specialist carrying incorrect deployment orders. 12 Velari warriors expected me to quit. A traitor expected them to die. The Draven expected an invasion. Everyone had expectations. What happened instead was simpler. Someone needed supplies, so I brought them. Someone needed help, so I went. And when 12 warriors were trapped behind enemy lines, I made the only decision that ever truly mattered. I went back. I thought Korren's arrest would end the matter. Instead, it changed the alliance. The Draven invasion plans proved how close we had come to disaster. Enemy fleets had been positioned beyond the frontier, supplied through hidden depots and prepared to strike 12 systems at once. Korren had given them everything they needed. Except time. Once his network collapsed, the Alliance moved first. I watched from Orion Command Nexus as fleets reinforced the border. Convoys were rerouted through human-controlled channels. Defense stations that had been undermanned for years suddenly received weapons, fuel, and personnel. The Draven commanders understood what had happened. They withdrew without firing. For the first time since humanity joined the Alliance, nobody called us inexperienced. They called meetings instead. Lots of them. I spent 2 weeks explaining human logistics to officers who had previously considered our methods unnecessarily complicated. Why maintain 3 supply routes? An Atari admiral asked me. Because one can fail. Why conceal emergency depots from your allies? Because allies can become compromised. Why place manual controls on automated systems? Because computers break. He stared at me as though I had insulted mathematics. The Alliance had been built by civilizations that trusted systems refined over thousands of years. Humans trusted systems too. We simply prepared for them to fail. High Command eventually created a commission to study what happened at Black Ridge. Their report recommended something unprecedented. Mixed species military units, human logistics officers serving with Velari warriors, Atari analysts supporting human fleets, Korath engineers working beside Earth technicians. The proposal caused months of arguments. Shadow Spear ignored them. We already knew it worked. My temporary assignment, however, was ending. A message from Human Command arrived 3 days after the Commission published its report. They offered me promotion to lieutenant and permanent placement at Atlas Point. Better quarters, better pay, no unauthorized flights through asteroid fields. I read the offer twice. Then I declined it. Maya found me packing equipment that evening. Human Command wants you back. Apparently. You refused. Apparently. She watched me carefully. Why? I closed the case. Because my work here isn't finished. Your investigation is complete. I wasn't talking about the investigation. For once, Maya had no immediate answer. I looked toward the training hall, where Emily was arguing with 2 warriors about something involving my survival odds. Black Ridge had stopped feeling temporary. That realization surprised me. ILL request permanent assignment, I said. Maya's expression became unreadable. You assume Shadow Spear will accept you. That's why it's called a request. And if we refuse, I picked up my case. Then ILL leave. She nodded once. No promise. No reassurance. Very Velari. The following morning, my request entered the Alliance system. By noon, Human Command approved it. At 1400, High Command approved it. One authorization remained. Shadow Spear itself. Under the new mixed unit regulations, every existing member had to vote. Unanimously, I had faced Draven warships with less anxiety. For 3 days, nobody mentioned the vote. Emily avoided the subject. Maya said nothing. On the 4th morning, I received orders to clear my quarters. No explanation. I assumed I had my answer. So I packed everything I owned into one deployment case. It was the same case I had carried into Black Ridge months earlier. I walked toward the hangar alone. Halfway there, the corridor doors opened. All 12 members of Shadow Spear were waiting on the other side. Maya stepped forward. I stopped. For the first time since joining them, I had absolutely no idea what was about to happen. I looked at the 12 Velari blocking the corridor and assumed they had come to say goodbye. Maya stepped toward me. Your assignment has expired. I know. You requested permanent placement with Shadow Spear. I did. She looked at the deployment case in my hand. Then why are you leaving? I hesitated. My quarters were ordered cleared. Emily made a sound that suspiciously resembled laughter. Maya glanced at her. The quarters were cleared because permanent members live in the East Barracks. I stared at her. Nobody had told me that. Maya continued before I could answer. Alliance regulations require unanimous approval before an outsider may permanently join an established special operations unit. I read the regulations. Then you understand the vote. I nodded. She handed me a data tablet. 12 names appeared on the screen. Beside every name was the same word. Approved. I read the list twice. You all voted yes? Emily stepped forward. Some of us considered voting no. Really? No. Several warriors smiled. Maya remained serious. You came to us as a logistics specialist. We expected you to leave when our work became dangerous. You made that fairly clear. We were wrong. Coming from Maya, those 3 words carried more weight than any ceremony. She placed her fist against my chest. One by one, the others followed. When Emily reached me, she leaned closer. You are still physically inadequate. Thank you, but useful. Much better. Then Maya handed me another document. My new orders. Permanent Field Coordinator. Shadow Spear. For several seconds, I simply looked at them. I had never intended to join an elite Velari unit. I had never intended to expose a traitor. I certainly had never intended to fly an obsolete transport through an asteroid field while enemy warships tried to kill me. But intentions had stopped mattering somewhere along the way. When do I start? I asked. Maya turned away. 0600 tomorrow. Emily shook her head. He is already a member. He starts now. Maya considered this. Agreed. I sighed. Of course. We walked back toward the training hall together. My deployment case remained in my hand. I realized I was still carrying everything I owned. Where exactly are the East Barracks? Emily pointed down another corridor. Later. Why later? The training doors opened. Inside, 12 combat mats had been prepared. There was also a 13th. I stopped. No. Emily smiled. Yes, I am the field coordinator. You are Shadow Spear. I coordinate fields. You also require training. I survived the Draven by running away through asteroids. Strategically, Maya walked onto the training floor. Emily, Commander, try not to break him. No promises. 10 minutes later, I was lying flat on my back, staring at the ceiling. Emily stood above me. Again, that was when I understood the real consequence of becoming the first human member of Shadow Spear. The galaxy had changed its opinion of humanity. Shadow Spear had accepted me as one of their own, and I was going to spend the foreseeable future being thrown across training rooms by alien women who considered gravity a suggestion. Strangely, I was fine with that, because for the first time since arriving at Orion Command Nexus, I knew exactly where I belonged. Then the combat alarm sounded. Every smile disappeared. Maya looked toward the tactical display. A new mission had arrived. I got to my feet. This time, nobody asked whether the human was coming. They already knew. The mission was routine. That was what surprised me. 6 months earlier, Shadow Spear had been sent into impossible situations with missing ammunition and unreliable intelligence. Now our transport departed Black Ridge carrying everything we requested, plus backups. I had insisted on the backups. Nobody argued anymore. The Draven conspiracy had changed more than our supply routes. Across Alliance territory, commanders were rebuilding procedures that had remained untouched for centuries. Human methods were spreading. Redundant communications, independent supply networks, manual overrides, emergency caches. The older civilizations had once considered these things evidence that humans lacked faith in their own technology. Now they called it resilience doctrine. I found that amusing. Maya did not. Humans enjoy being proven correct, she observed. Everyone enjoys being proven correct. Velari prefer being correct initially. I couldn't argue with that. The greatest change was visible aboard Orion Command Nexus itself. Mixed species units were becoming normal. Humans trained beside Velari. Atari intelligence officers worked with Earth analysts. Alliance engineers adopted human contingency planning, while human officers studied military traditions refined across thousands of years. It wasn't always easy, but it worked. High Command published its final report on the Draven crisis 11 months after Korren's arrest. I read it alone. According to the report, humanity's contribution had prevented a frontier invasion that could have killed billions. The conclusion was surprisingly simple. Humanity was no longer classified as a developing military partner. We were recognized as a full strategic member of the Alliance. I closed the report. 6 years earlier, most civilizations had considered us children. Now they wanted our officers teaching at their academies. The galaxy had finally noticed humanity. I wasn't sure that was entirely good. Humans were useful because we expected failure. Our ships carried emergency systems for emergency systems. Our soldiers prepared evacuation routes before battles began. Our logistics officers assumed supplies would disappear. We behaved that way because human history had taught us a simple lesson. Anything that can go wrong eventually will. The ancient civilizations found that philosophy pessimistic. Then the Draven nearly invaded them. Afterward, they found it practical. I understood something else too. The Alliance had believed our greatest strength was improvisation. They were wrong. Improvisation was simply what people saw when preparation encountered an unexpected problem. I had crossed the asteroid field because I knew the Wayfarer's limits. I had supplied Shadow Spear because the hidden network already existed. I had exposed Korren because the tracking beacons had been placed before the ambush. Nothing had been a miracle. We had prepared. That was the part of humanity the galaxy was only beginning to understand. We did not expect plans to survive. We expected ourselves to. Years later, historians would call the Draven crisis the moment humanity earned the Alliance's respect. I never liked that description. Respect wasn't what changed. Trust was. The next time Shadow Spear received an impossible mission, High Command did not ask whether sending a human with them would create complications. They asked how many humans we needed. Maya looked at the request. Then she looked at me. Well, I considered it. 3 engineers. Anything else? 2 transports. She waited. And? I smiled. Backups. Maya sighed. Of course. 24 hours later, we departed. 13 members of Shadow Spear. 12 Velari. 1 human. Nobody aboard Orion Command Nexus considered that unusual anymore. And perhaps that was the greatest change of all. My new orders arrived 18 months after the Draven crisis. I was in the Black Ridge operations room when the message appeared. Human Defense Command. That alone was unusual. I opened it. They were offering me command of a new joint logistics division aboard Atlas Point. Promotion included my own staff, authority over supply operations across 6 frontier sectors. It was the kind of assignment people built careers around. Maya found me reading it. You have been promoted. Apparently, you do not sound pleased. I haven't accepted. She studied me. Why? I looked through the observation window. Shadow Spear was training below. Emily was correcting a new recruit's stance with her usual lack of patience. The others moved through combat drills I had watched hundreds of times. This place had become familiar. That mattered more than I expected. Human Command wants an answer tomorrow. And what will you tell them? I don't know. Maya nodded. She didn't try to convince me. That was one of the reasons I respected her. Later that night, I walked through Black Ridge alone. When I first arrived, I had been an administrative mistake, or so I believed. Then I became a coordinator. Then a liability. Then, somehow, family. The word felt strange. Velari did not use it casually. Neither did I. The next morning, I contacted Human Command. The Admiral on the screen looked genuinely confused when I declined. Specialist Miller, this is a command position. I understand. You would be helping create the first permanent joint military network. I know. Then why refuse? I considered my answer. Because someone else can build it. And Shadow Spear? I looked toward the training hall. They only have one human. The Admiral stared at me. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Requesting permanent retention? Yes, sir. Approved. That afternoon, Maya called the entire unit together. Humanity's joint unit proposal had passed. Across the Alliance, new teams would combine species that had once refused even to share command structures. Shadow Spear had become the model. I found that uncomfortable. Emily found it hilarious. They will study you in military academies. That's disturbing. Perhaps they will build a statue. I'll resign. She laughed. Maya approached us. The first joint units become operational next month. Good, I said. You could command one. I heard. And I am staying. Maya was silent. Emily wasn't. We know. I frowned. How? You unpacked. I looked toward my quarters. She had a point. Maya extended her fist. This time, I understood immediately. I touched mine against it. No ceremony followed. No speeches. Shadow Spear returned to work. That evening, another mission appeared on our tactical display. Hostages. Enemy territory. Low probability of success. The kind of assignment Shadow Spear had always received. Maya looked around the room. 12 hours until deployment. I checked the logistics manifest. Then checked it again. Weapons. Medical supplies. Fuel. Emergency equipment. 3 evacuation routes. 2 backup transports. Everything was ready. Emily leaned over my shoulder. Expecting trouble? Always. She nodded as though this answer had finally become normal. Maybe it had. I looked around the room at 12 Velari warriors preparing for another impossible mission. Once, I had believed I stayed because my name was written on an assignment order. That hadn't been true for a long time. Orders could send someone to a unit. They could not make them belong there. That required a choice. I had made mine. Humanity was building a new kind of alliance. And I could have helped command it from somewhere safe. Instead, I remained at Black Ridge. Because when Shadow Spear went into the dark, I knew exactly where I belonged. I went with them. 27 years after I first arrived at Black Ridge, I stood in the same training hall carrying another set of orders. This time, they were retirement papers. I had survived Draven ambushes, border wars, failed peace agreements, and more Shadow Spear missions than I cared to count. But nobody defeats time, not even humans. The Velari aged slowly. Maya looked almost unchanged from the commander I had met decades earlier. I did not. My hair was gray. My left knee objected to cold stations. Emily had finally stopped throwing me across training rooms. Mostly, I signed the papers at 0900. By noon, everyone on Black Ridge knew. Nobody mentioned it. That worried me. At 1800, I returned to my quarters and packed my belongings into the same deployment case I had carried on my first day. It seemed appropriate. Then I walked toward the hangar. Halfway there, I stopped. All 12 members of Shadow Spear were approaching me. For a strange moment, I remembered another corridor, another departure, another time I had assumed they had come to say goodbye. Maya stopped in front of me. Jake Miller, Commander, you are leaving. That's generally what retirement means. Emily almost smiled. Maya didn't. She handed me a small black case. Inside was a Velari insignia. A silver spear crossing a dark circle. Shadow spear. I had worn the human version for decades. This one was different. It was Velari. Original. Permanent. I can't wear this, I said. You can. I am human. We noticed. Emily definitely smiled that time. Maya took the insignia from the case and attached it to my jacket. When you arrived, there were 12 members of Shadow Spear. I remember. We expected there would be 12 after you left. I looked at her. We were wrong. Behind Maya, the others placed closed fists against their chests. The old gesture. The first one they had ever taught me. You were never our coordinator, Maya said. Technically, I was. You talked too much in retirement. I smiled. She continued. You became our 13th member long before regulations recognized it. The hangar announcement called my transport. Nobody moved. I looked at the 12 warriors who had once taken bets on how quickly I would quit. Emily stepped forward. 6 days, she said. What? That was how long I believed you would last. I remember. I was incorrect. That must be difficult for you. Extremely. For a moment, none of us said anything. Then I picked up my case. There were no speeches, no ceremony. That would not have suited Shadow Spear. I walked toward the transport. At the ramp, I looked back once. All 12 were still standing there. Maya raised her fist. I raised mine. Then I boarded. Years later, Alliance historians would describe Shadow Spear as the first truly successful mixed-species special operations unit. Their records listed hundreds of missions. They documented the Draven conspiracy. They documented the reforms. They documented the creation of joint military forces. But one detail appeared differently in every official archive. Shadow Spear's authorized strength was 12. Its operational records listed 13. No correction was ever issued. Nobody requested one. And long after I left Black Ridge, whenever new recruits asked why the unit insignia contained 13 stars around a single silver spear, the Velari gave them the same answer. Once, a human came back for us. That was all they said. Apparently, it was enough. Many years after Jake Miller retired, I stood before a new generation of Shadow Spear recruits and told them about the first day I saw him. I remembered a lone human standing in our training hall with deployment orders in his hand. He looked ordinary, too ordinary. We were Velari. We had trained for war since childhood. Our unit had survived missions that destroyed entire companies. Then the Alliance sent us a human logistics specialist. We thought it was a mistake. We thought he was weak because he was different from us. We waited for him to run. He never did. When our supplies vanished, Jake searched for the reason. When our mission was betrayed, he found the pattern. When the Draven trapped us behind enemy lines, Alliance Command told everyone to wait for authorization. Jake did not wait. He took an old transport into enemy territory and brought us ammunition, medicine, and a way home. He could have remained safe. Instead, he came back for us. That day, I understood something about humanity that no military report could properly explain. Humans are not fearless. Jake was afraid. I saw it in his eyes. But fear did not decide what he would do. Loyalty did. Humans do not become part of a team simply because someone assigns them to it. Orders can place a human beside you, but orders cannot make them stay. They stay because they choose to. And once a human decides that you are one of their people, distance becomes irrelevant. Regulations become negotiable. Danger becomes a problem to solve. Jake never became Velari. He never needed to. He became Shadow Spear. Even now, our insignia carries 13 stars. 12 for the warriors who were born Velari, and 1 for the human who taught us what it meant to leave no one behind. The galaxy remembers Jake Miller as the man who exposed a traitor and helped prevent a war. I remember something simpler. When darkness closed around us, everyone else promised that rescue was coming. The human was the one who actually came.